I've been public speaking for over a quarter of a century now, and obviously in such a long time of public speaking to thousands and thousands of people, I've built up quite a bit of experience. But in all that experience, I've come up with three major rules that I still use up till today that make my talks a success whenever I go. And if for some reason I don't apply these rules, then my talks are not so much a success. Now, why am I doing this, and where did the inspiration for this particular video come from? Well, this video is basically a masterclass on public speaking, and it's inspired by, as the title of this video suggests, by Shakespeare. Now, how did I come by that? Well, you know, it's holiday time, and I've been looking for holiday activities. So currently, I'm studying Julius Caesar by Shakespeare. Now, I did this book in school back in 1992, I think, and I've been studying some of the great authors of the past just to improve my English and to improve my my speaking abilities and my writing abilities, and particularly my public speaking. And everybody just seems to come back to Shakespeare. Now, I know what people think about Shakespeare, right? We hate the subject in school. I hated the subject in school. Well, not hated it. I had a love-hate relationship with it. I think I enjoyed Shakespeare, but I hated the way that we were taught it and the way we were assessed on it. And so when I started rediscovering Shakespeare, I found so much of enjoyment in Shakespeare's writings, but not just that, but also in the deeper learnings that are to be derived from those writings. And I'm going to get to that now. But first, let me get to my three rules of public speaking. Now, whenever I go on stage to speak, there are three rules that I stick to. Rule number one is know your audience. That to me is probably the most important rule, and I'll explain it shortly. The second rule is build connection and trust with your audience. And the third thing is carefully craft your message to that audience. Now, what do I mean by these three things? First and foremost, know thy audience, know who you are speaking to. And this goes beyond just knowing what profession they are or what demographic they are. It's also got to do with getting to know them a little more intimately, in the sense of, why are they here? What do they want from here? Obviously, they are sitting in front of you, and people don't just come and sit somewhere or don't make themselves present somewhere unless they perceive some sort of value in what you're going to give them. Are you going to teach them something? Are you going to entertain them? Are you going to give them something that's going to be transformative in their lives? What are their expectations? The second thing is, what is their frame of mind at that particular time? I mean, when I speak to an audience in the morning versus when I speak to them after lunch, I know that although it might be the same people, but their mindsets are completely different. In the morning, they are all charged up, fueled on breakfast and coffee, and their minds are fresh, and so they can take in, understand, comprehend more complex topics. But in the afternoon, particularly after a heavy lunch, that's not what they want to hear. Now, that's the same audience, but with a different mindset. Now the mindset is not charged up and ready for the day, but kind of slowing down and looking forward to end of the day, looking forward to putting their legs up and relaxing. So you got to know your audience. You got to know who you are speaking to. What is their mood? What is their mindset? What do they want? And how do you, knowing this, craft your message to them so that it is most effective? So that's the first thing. My second rule of public speaking is, when you start speaking to your audience, don't just delve into your topic. Don't just dive in and start delivering your message. Build a connection with your audience. Build trust with them. And you do this through a number of different ways. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of that, but one good example is to use humor. So you start off your speech with some humor. That's why you get a lot of these public speakers starting off with something like, a strange thing happened to me on my way here. So, I mean, that's old. Please don't ever use that. That's outdated. So what you need to do is build trust, either through humor or through some personal story or through something that matters to both you and them. There are lots of ways. Go and look it up. Now, once you build that trust, once you build that connection, they are now open to your message that you need to deliver. They are ready to accept that message. Versus if you just start delivering, if you go there, stand and deliver this well-practiced speech of yours, there's a good chance that your audience, because of that lack of trust and that lack of connection, might listen and might understand what you are saying, but they might not really accept what you have to say. So build trust. And the third thing is, now that you've understood your audience and you've stood up there, and because you understood them, you were able to understand what matters to them and why are they here. Once you understand that, you can now say something that builds their trust. And finally, once you build their trust, now it's the field is ripe for you to deliver your message. But even there, you need to craft your message very, very carefully. You need to craft your message with a very good balance of emotions and logic, because people are emotional creatures. Remember, they're going to remember how you made them feel, not so much what you said to them. So make them feel something when you are speaking to them. But also, don't make it all about emotions, because then people will walk away and say, well, that was a good talk, but what did he say? What did I learn from there? I don't know. There are too many public speakers I know like that. You can sit in their talk and you will be shaken and stirred and you will be moved, and sometimes you might shed a tear. But at the end of it, what did I really get out of this? I don't know. Anything that I can use, anything that is transformative in my life? No, it just moved me. Like watching a sad old rom-com, sad old romantic movie or something like that. So there's nothing to be derived. So don't make your speech all about emotions, and don't make it like Vulcan Spock logic, only about logic. There needs to be a blend of two. Now, how do you get to that point? You get to that point by studying speeches, by studying the works of orators and taking notes and practicing. Just practicing. That's when you will find that mix. Now, as I said earlier, one of the best places to learn this is in the works of Shakespeare, because Shakespeare is a master when it comes to knowing who your audience is, when it comes to the psychology of the audience. Shakespeare, I suspect, was some kind of psychologist, because he understood human minds, he understood the human condition, he understood what matters to people, and then he wrote accordingly. He was also, when it came to building trust, when it came to connecting with his audience, he was a master. He created characters that you could instantly identify with, characters that you could say, hey, that reminds me of me. And finally, the messages he crafted. Obviously, he was a master of the language, right? You have to be a master of the language to write the way he did, with the iambic pentameter, with every line of his being an iambic pentameter. That takes a lot of skill. So what specifically can we learn about Shakespeare? Now, I'm going to give you one case study from Shakespeare. And that case study is from this book I'm studying currently, Julius Caesar. And this is the speech that Mark Antony gives when Shakespeare is killed by Brutus, Cassius, and some of the other senators. Now, just to give you some background into it. The background is this, in case you haven't read the book and you're not familiar with it. Julius Caesar was a highly decorated, highly respected general, and he was now became the Caesar of Rome, and he was becoming more and more powerful. Now, despite all of his achievements, you've got these group of his so-called friends who started to become concerned about his rising power. And they felt like he's going to become arrogant. All his success is going to get to his head. He's going to become arrogant and he's going to become a dictator. So they decided that it's better that he be dead, crazy logic, rather than let him become a dictator and make everybody suffer. So anyways, long story short, they planned this whole assassination. They assassinated him. That's when the famous line, "Et tu, Brute, then falls Caesar." That's where that comes in. And that was that. And now it's the day of Caesar's funeral, and Mark Antony comes back from Egypt, where he's been on some campaigns. Now, Mark Antony is also a very decorated war general, and he was very close to Shakespeare. Him and Shakespeare were very close friends. And so obviously Mark Antony didn't approve of this action of Brutus and Cassius and the others. But he couldn't speak out against it because his own life would be in danger. He would be killed by them because they were very, very powerful men. And so he decided that he would give a speech at Caesar's funeral, which, by the way, Cassius wasn't too happy about. He said to Brutus, "You'd rather not let him speak. We can't trust what this guy is going to say." But anyways, Brutus says, "No, he'll speak after me, and I will give such a powerful speech that nothing he could say afterwards will affect what people think about this whole situation. I will give a powerful speech." And Brutus did give a powerful speech. Along comes Mark Antony afterwards, and he gives a speech that is so powerful, so simple yet eloquent in its message, in the way he delivers it, in the way he manipulates the audience, in the way that he uses emotions, and he uses figures of speech and logic and rhetoric, that he turns the entire audience. That was at one point, at the start of his speech, they were dead against Caesar. They were happy he was dead. And now he turned their minds, all in the duration of one speech. That is incredible, incredible writing. So you know the backdrop to it. Now I want you to do an exercise. I want you to go and watch a video, right? It's a short video. It's a 3-minute video. I'll put the link in the description below this video. It's the video clip of Marlon Brando acting out this speech. He's Mark Antony now in the movie, and he's acting out the speech. Brilliant piece of acting. I mean, writing mastery from Shakespeare and acting mastery from Marlon Brando. I mean, it's such a far cry, right, from modern Hollywood movies and the mass-produced nonsense they put out. But go and watch this. Watch this, pause this video, go watch that, and come back. And then we'll talk about it. You back? Okay. You could watch it later also. Now, there's something you understand in the speech that Mark Antony gives. The first thing is, he starts off with, "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears." So look at the way he refers to them. He refers to them as friends, fellow Romans, countrymen. And then he says, "Lend me your ears." Immediately, what is he doing? He's building that trust. See, but let's go a step before that. As I explained earlier, Mark Antony, he's read the room. He knows there's a lot of hostility. He knows that there's a lot of people who are happy that Caesar is dead, and they are also bloodthirsty, and his life is at stake. So he understands that. He understands the psychology. He's read the room. Prickly pears, danger. But he starts off in this way. And then those first few lines that he delivers shows complete solidarity with the people and the group of senators that murdered Caesar. Complete solidarity. He says things like, "I've come to bury Caesar," and he talks about some of the grievous things that Caesar did. And then he uses a line there which is repeated throughout his speech. And Brutus is an honorable man. Now take note of that, because that repetition is not for nothing. That repetition has the value of putting a doubt each time that he says it. So the first time he says it, Brutus is an honorable man. Yes, lot of conviction. Brutus is an honorable man. And the actions they took in killing Caesar wasn't honorable. But by the second time he says this, the level of confidence in the people has gone a little down because of the context, because of what he said preceding that. And the third time, even lower. And by the end of the speech, the people are now completely turned against Brutus. So he's read the room, right? Again, coming back to my 3 rules. Understand your audience. Secondly, build trust. So he built trust by referring to them as friends and Romans and countrymen and talking about the grievous things that Shakespeare did. But once he got their trust, now he used emotions. Now obviously this is a very emotional time, so he used a lot of rhetoric and a lot of emotions to win them over. And he used these repetitions, and he used silences. That's another incredible thing about Shakespeare. I mean, it's never the same when you're reading it on the page versus seeing it actually enacted, because these are plays. These are not meant to be novels. These are meant to be plays that are enacted by brilliant actors. But that silence, at one point Mark Antony turns around and he says, and he turns his back to the audience and he kind of apologizes. He says, my heart is in that coffin with Caesar. And he just keeps quiet. And that silence is one of the most eloquent silences that you can imagine, because it gives the audience the time to absorb what he just said. And it also shows his trust and his vulnerability to his audience, because he's got his back turned to them. You won't turn your back to people you don't trust. So he says, in modern parlance, he's saying, I'm just a bit emotional, I'm so sorry. Just give me a few moments. But those moments were not for him. Those moments were for the audience. As I said, by the end of the talk, the audience was ranting. They were gone in a state of frenzy against those people who killed Caesar. So nonetheless, this was a masterful work of art by Shakespeare. And I strongly recommend you watch this video a few times and you look at the breakdown that I've given you and try to understand the mastery in that. I mean, we're not taught these things in school, unfortunately, but these things are necessary today in the business world, in your profession. To succeed, you're going to need to be a good speaker. You're going to need to be a good public speaker. You're going to need to be able to convince people of things. I'm not saying manipulate. That's a different, taking it to a different level. But convince people. For example, you've got a good business idea. You want to pitch it to investors. You need to be able to convince them. So many people pitch their ideas to me, and it's like the most boring thing ever, because they don't follow these 3 rules and they don't know the first thing about public speaking. But if you can master this, if you can master these skills, you will be successful in your career and in your business.